No one wants to admit they're foolish. But the truth is, there are habits, lifestyles, and mindsets quietly turning you into a shallow woman. Even if you've got a fancy degree, make good money, or have thousands of followers on social media. You think you're wise just because you've been through a few rough patches? You think you're woke just because you know what toxic means, what red flag means? Don't get ahead of yourself. Real wisdom isn't in the words you use, it's in how you live, quietly, firmly, without delusion. This video won't be easy to hear, but if you've got the guts to face it, the following 7 signs will show you the truth. And maybe, for the first time in your life, you'll start living like a truly mature woman. If this is your first time visiting the channel, hit subscribe and like so you don't miss out on exciting upcoming content. There's a type of woman who spends her entire day stuck on one question. Am I pretty enough yet? She'll drop millions on her hair, fix her nose, bleach her skin, chase the trendiest lipstick on Instagram. But ask her, when was the last time she seriously looked at herself, reflected on her character, asked whether she's lived decently, done anything she can be proud of? And she goes silent. Women like that aren't rare. In fact, society now cheers them on. Social media turns every glance into a never-ending beauty contest. And the weakest women are the ones who try the hardest to fit themselves into that perfect frame. They live for the eyes of others, for the likes, for shallow validation. But what they don't see is this. Living like that is the fastest way to lose yourself. A woman who only polishes her exterior and abandons her inner life is no different from a house that looks good on the outside but is hollow inside. It's just a matter of time before it collapses. Stoicism doesn't oppose beauty, but it holds contempt for shallowness. Because your looks are the first thing that will betray you when time arrives. Every beauty fades, every body ages. But dignity, courage, integrity, no one can take those from you if you've got the guts to hold on to them. You'll recognize a foolish woman, not because she dresses flashy or loves posting photos, but because she actually believes that's all it takes to be loved, respected, or successful. She thinks her looks will make a man stay. But the truth is, men may be attracted to the body, but they stay for the soul. And if you're empty inside, no layer of makeup is thick enough to hide that forever. A wise woman never stops learning, never stops sharpening her intellect, never stops refining her morality like an invisible sword. She may be beautiful, but that beauty isn't in her curves. It's in the steel in her eyes. It's not in her skin. It's in the way she keeps her word, treats others, and faces life. She doesn't need to show skin to get noticed, because her very presence demands respect. If you're the type who only feels valuable when someone says, "You're so pretty," then sorry. You're living like a decoration. No substance, no depth, no future. And you don't get to complain when people dismiss you because you put yourself in that position. Instead of spending time getting your chin done, learn how to grit your teeth and face uncomfortable truths. Instead of chasing outfits that make people stare, build a presence that commands respect, even when you're dressed simply. Because a woman can lose everything, money, beauty, even love. But if she doesn't lose her resilience and self-respect, then she's still powerful. You want people to look at you with admiration? Then stop living like a doll and start living like a warrior. You don't need to scream, "I deserve this." Just become the kind of woman no one can ignore. Character can't be faked. And if you're still living off the gaze of others, then you've never truly lived. No one forced you to be weak. You chose that. And the scariest part is, you actually believe you're innocent. You tell yourself hundreds of stories to justify your laziness, your lack of discipline, and your own cowardice. My parents didn't care. Society is too harsh. Men aren't decent. I've been hurt before. Sound familiar? That's the eternal anthem of those who refuse to grow up. They assume that if they're suffering, they must be right. And from that sense of being right, they build an entire fortress to justify their own helplessness. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you that makes you suffer, but how you respond to it." That means, circumstances don't define you, your attitude does. And if you choose to blame, you've just thrown away the only power you have, the power to change your life. The truth is, you can't control the world, but you can absolutely control yourself. No one is obligated to make you happy. No man is responsible for healing the pain you've been through. No system owes you an opportunity. If you want a better life, you've got to go out and take it. With action, not with tears. And if you won't, then don't expect anyone to respect you. Personal responsibility isn't a burden. It's the one thing that makes you grow. It turns you from a victim into someone in charge. From a dreamy girl into a woman who can walk through storms without bowing her head. But to get there, you have to start with the courage to look straight at yourself and admit, my life is what I made it, good or bad. You want to change your relationship? Don't blame toxic men. Ask, why did I choose him in the first place? You want a more stable career? Don't say no one gave me a chance. Ask, have I done enough to deserve that chance? You want a happy life? Don't wait for someone to bring it to you. Start by cutting out the things that make you despise yourself every single day. Maybe you were hurt, maybe you were betrayed, abandoned, insulted. I'm not denying that, but you're not special. Everyone's been through pain. The real question is, will you keep using the past as a shield to avoid change? Or will you use it as fuel to burn away the weak version of yourself you hate seeing in the mirror? Men don't respect a woman who's constantly complaining, and the world doesn't stop spinning just to wait for you to get back up. You can choose to keep blaming everything and everyone, but remember, no one's coming to save you. There's no true love, no guardian angel, no God will fix it. There's only you, with the truth, the pain, and the choice. Stand up, or keep living like someone to be pitied. If you want to be respected, start by taking responsibility for your job, your emotions, and your decisions. Taking responsibility doesn't make you cold, it makes you immune to manipulation, unshakable, impossible to ignore. And one day when you stand in front of the mirror, no makeup, no filters, no cover-ups, you'll see a woman you can be proud of. Not because she never made mistakes, but because she never ran from them. The truth is, some women aren't living their own lives. They live inside other people's heads. Every step they take, every word they say, every photo they post is edited not with skill, but with fear. What will people think of me? And that's the tragedy. The tragedy of those who trade truth for approval. The tragedy of people who wear a mask in public and bury their true selves deep down, just because they're afraid of being disliked, judged, or seen as too different. They don't choose the job they want. They don't dare leave toxic relationships. They don't voice their real opinions. And every night they feel exhausted, not from overwork, but from overacting. If you're living like that, then sorry. You're not free. You're a prisoner inside a cage you built yourself out of judgment, expectations, and the stares of strangers. A wise woman knows her value doesn't lie in what others think. It lies in knowing what she's living for. She doesn't need permission to be herself. She doesn't need applause to believe she's right. She can stand alone because her spine is straight enough not to need a fake support. Stoicism calls this living by logos, living by reason, by consciously chosen values, not by impulse, not by the crowd, and definitely not by the noise out there. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning, today I'll meet fools, liars, and traitors, but I'll hold my dignity because no one can take my reason from me. The question isn't, what will they say about me? It should be, am I betraying myself just to be liked? If the answer is yes, then you're on the wrong path. Because no love is worth losing your essence. No approval is worth silencing your truth. And no pleasing others is worth living a fake life. Understand this, social acceptance is the sweetest trap ever invented. It makes you believe that if you're good enough, polite enough, cute enough, you'll be loved. But being loved for pleasing them isn't being loved for who you are. It's loving the version they invented. And when you're too tired to maintain that mask, they'll leave. Not because you changed, but because you finally came back to yourself. So do this, starting today. Shut your ears. Listen to yourself. Dare to say what you believe. Dare to choose what you want. Dare to upset people, if it means keeping your self-respect. You weren't born to be a replica of someone's expectations. You were born to become the fullest version of yourself. And that version will never come to life as long as you're still living through someone else's gaze. One day, when you stop trying to be liked, you'll discover something strange. They'll start respecting you. You can't grow if your emotions control you, but many women live exactly like that. Every fleeting emotion turns into a storm that sweeps away their reason. When they're angry, they have to let it out. When they're sad, the whole world must know. When they feel offended, they must strike back immediately. No pause, no filter, no awareness. They call it being honest. But in truth, it's just lack of discipline. There's a huge difference between being honest about your feelings and being a slave to them. A weak woman lets emotions dictate her actions. A wise woman lets reason lead the way. And emotions are just input, not commands to obey. Ever ruined a relationship just because you were angry at the moment? Ever said something cruel, then regretted it because it was just a heat of the moment thing? Ever cried because someone didn't treat you the way you expected, forgetting that you can't control the world? If so, then you already know. Emotions, when left unchecked, can become weapons of self-destruction. Stoicism doesn't ask you to be emotionless. On the contrary, it teaches you to observe your emotions without being consumed by them. As Seneca said, we suffer not from the events in our lives, but from how we view them. Emotions are natural reactions. But your actions, your words, your behavior, your decisions, those are what define you. A strong woman doesn't fall apart from a single insult. She doesn't lose her dignity because her boyfriend was distant. She doesn't throw a tantrum when she's rejected, just to prove she's worthy. She knows this one truth. Inner calm is a soft power that commands respect without making a sound. When you control your emotions, you take control of your life. And that doesn't happen overnight. It requires you to sit with yourself and ask, what does this anger say about me? Where is this sadness really coming from? Will this reaction help me move forward, or just give me one more thing to regret? If you want to become the kind of woman others can trust, commit to, and admire, emotional stability isn't optional. It's non-negotiable. No one builds a future with a ticking time bomb. No one feels safe next to someone who needs to be handled every time something happens. And no one truly respects a person who solves every problem with tears. Emotions are human. Control is growth. If you can't trust yourself when you're angry, be silent. If you feel like crying from pain, breathe. Not for anyone else, but because you owe yourself a version that's stronger than this. A woman can be hurt, but she doesn't let that hurt become an excuse to act foolishly. She knows how to stand back up, wipe the tears, and choose a response, not driven by emotion, but by self-respect. And that's the difference between a weak woman and a woman who cannot be broken. Here's a hard truth. The more you crave material things, the more you feel lacking. The more you live for what you don't have, the more you'll never be enough. And in this world, nothing shackles you tighter than your own greed. Women today are taught that having money means having freedom, that designer labels mean value, that cars and houses mean you've earned a voice. The problem is, no one tells them what that chase will cost. You work yourself to the bone, not because you love what you do, but because you don't want to fall behind. You choose a man not because you love him, but because he's well off. You swipe your credit card for things you don't need, just to impress people you don't even like. That's not living. That's performing. And the better you get at the act, the deeper you sink into the fake life you've created. Stoicism doesn't treat material wealth as evil, but it does look it straight in the eye. Material things are temporary. You can lose them at any moment. And if your self-worth is tied to something that can be taken away, you've handed your life over to someone else. Epictetus said, if you want true freedom, learn to desire less. That doesn't mean you have to live poor or suffer. It means you have to ask yourself who's in control. Do you own your possessions, or do your possessions own you? A smart woman doesn't measure her worth by the brand on her bag. She measures it by her self-respect, by the fact that she can sleep at night without feeling ashamed of what she had to trade to get the life she's living. She doesn't need anyone to pay for her. She doesn't need to flaunt a thing, because the calm in her eyes already says it all. I could, but I don't need to. You want to be rich? Fine. But get rich in a way that lets you lift your head, not lower it. Get rich through strength, not manipulation or online showmanship. Remember, if you have to sacrifice integrity to get money, you've just sold off the one thing that truly sets you apart from the crowd. Many women trade away their youth, their morals, even their dignity, all for a shell of a life, a luxury condo, an expensive bracelet, a 5-star vacation. But what they don't realize is this: the real price isn't on the receipt, it's in their soul. And they know it every time they look in the mirror. You don't need to live like a monk, but you need to stay sharp enough to recognize when greed is pulling your strings. Every time you think, I'll be happy if I just have a little more, stop, because happiness is never in the more. It's in knowing what's enough and having the power to choose what's actually worth sacrificing for. A wise woman doesn't live poor, but she's willing to live simply, if that simplicity protects her peace. She doesn't scream, I've got money. She lets the richness in her quiet presence make people curious, make them respect her, make them tread carefully. Because in the end, when everything's stripped away, beauty, status, attention, the bank account, the only thing left is who you are when you have nothing. And if that answer is a whole lot of emptiness, then you've already lost, no matter what you're wearing or what you're driving. There's a kind of woman who stays stuck in a loop, repeating the same mistakes, falling for the same type of lousy men, reacting negatively in the same old patterns, then crying, then blaming life, only to do it all over again next time. They learn nothing from pain because they never dare to sit down and face the real cause themselves. Self-reflection is the hardest thing a human being can do, because it demands that you strip away all disguises, drop every justification, and admit to things so painful you just want to look away. I've lived poorly, I've behaved badly, I've made stupid choices. I'm the one who needs to change. And instead of doing that, people choose the easier route: blame. I'm like this because of my parents. My life is miserable because society is unfair. It didn't work out because they weren't sincere. I can't change because this is how I've always been. Those words might sound reasonable, but let's call them what they are: the way weak people avoid growing up. Stoicism teaches us one clear lesson. If you can't control yourself, you control nothing in life. And if you don't know how to observe yourself, you'll forever live like a drifting boat, crashing into old failures dressed in new names. Self-reflection doesn't mean self-loathing. It's not sitting there tearing yourself apart forever. On the contrary, it's the highest form of courage, the strength to look straight into your own darkness, not to be swallowed by it, but to understand it, correct it, and rise above it. A mature woman is someone who stops and asks herself, how have I contributed to this mess? She doesn't scream that the world is unfair. She doesn't demand anyone else to heal her. She uses her pain as a mirror to extract a lesson, to avoid repeating it, and to keep moving forward. And the key is this: she seeks feedback from others, not to please anyone, but to find the blind spots she hasn't yet seen. A wise woman doesn't fear the truth, even when it's brutal, because she knows the truth might cut, but lies rot you from within. You can't change if you always see yourself as the victim. You can't grow if all you do is self-soothe. If you want a life that matters, you've got to be brave enough to ask the hard questions. What am I pretending not to see? What fear am I avoiding? What mistake do I keep repeating? And why haven't I learned from it yet? If you can't answer those questions, don't expect a different future. Because the future only changes when the person living in the present changes. A truly strong woman isn't someone who's never wrong. She's someone who refuses to keep being wrong in the same way. She learns, she adjusts, she moves. Every fall is one step closer to a better version of herself. Not in words, but in action. And one day she'll be able to look back at her old self, flawed, impulsive, naive, and smile, not out of regret, but out of gratitude. Because it was that version who gave her the chance to grow, to become the kind of woman even she has to respect. There are women who walk into a room and immediately dominate the space with noise. They talk non-stop to prove they know something, to cover up their insecurity, to leave no room for anyone to disagree. But the irony is this: the more they talk, the more they reveal their emptiness. Because those who truly understand don't need to speak all the time. Those with real inner strength don't need to constantly prove themselves. But those without it are terrified of silence. If you can't sit in silence for even 1 minute, that says more than any words you're trying to pour out. You're learning nothing. Stoicism teaches one simple thing: silence is the strength of the self-controlled. The wise listen to understand, not to reply. The mature don't interrupt, don't hijack conversations, don't rush to conclusions just to satisfy their ego. They observe, they analyze, and when they speak, their words carry weight. In contrast, the kind of woman who always needs to have an opinion, always needs the last word, always has to insert herself into every conversation, is the kind of person most afraid to admit the one thing she avoids the most: her own inner insecurity. She needs attention to feel valuable. She needs to talk endlessly to fill the void she won't face. And as a result, she ends up destroying her most meaningful relationships. No one wants to be close to someone who never listens. No man feels safe living with a walking loudspeaker. No one truly respects someone who always needs to be the center, but doesn't know when to step back. Listening is an act of humility, and humility is the clearest sign of a soul that has endured enough to understand and grown wise enough to stay silent when it counts. If you're the kind of person who speaks before thinking, reacts before analyzing, cuts others off to force your opinions, it's time to stop. Not to fix others, but to fix yourself. Learn to sit and listen without interrupting. Learn to ask, "Did I understand that correctly?" instead of rushing to contradict. Learn to let others finish, not because you're lesser, but because you're strong enough to stay in control. And most importantly, learn to listen to yourself. Not just what you want to hear, but what you need to hear, even when it stings. A wise woman doesn't speak too much, but when she does, people listen, because they know she only speaks when there's truly something worth saying. And what's truly worth saying only shows up after moments of still, conscious listening. Eventually, you'll realize the right silence carries more weight than 1,000 words. It not only makes you more compelling, it makes you no longer crave approval from anyone else, because you finally started learning how to respect yourself. You can be beautiful, seductive, impressive, but if you carry these 7 signs, you're living like a fool dressed in luxury. And the saddest part, no one needs to destroy you. You're doing it yourself, every single day. No one can change if they keep clinging to old habits, a fragile ego, and a victim mindset. You can spend your life justifying everything, or you can look straight into the mirror and ask, do I have the guts to become a woman who's respected, not pitied? Wisdom doesn't come from how much you've studied, how much you've read, or how many compliments you've received. It comes from your ability to act differently, quietly, resiliently, without needing anyone's applause. You can choose to keep living the same way, or you can choose to start rebuilding from the inside out. No one's coming to save you, but you can save yourself, if you dare. Thank you for being here. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, turn on notifications, and like this video. Don't forget to leave a comment so we can spread positivity together.